Let's talk about leadership lessons from Careless People, a book that's definitely been in the news of late. Now, in this video, it'll be a mix between a legal case breakdown, but really 5 lessons that every organization can learn from this book, including things that haven't gotten as much coverage. Now, why this book is getting so much coverage is it's by Sarah Wynne Williams, a former executive at Meta, Facebook. She was let go by Facebook about 8 years ago. She was in global policy. Now, this book, she's been called a whistleblower because it talks about a lot of the things that she says happen, including a lot of things about specific Meta executives, like Mark Zuckerberg, like Sheryl Sandberg, ones that are known for other reasons. Now, Meta actually went and got an emergency arbitration to stop her promotion and other things about the book because Sarah had signed an NDA. They said that this was in violation of it. So the arbitrator actually ruled in Meta's favor. So Sarah Wynne Williams is now barred from further promotion of the book. But I still obviously got it. And it's still available as of when I'm recording on Amazon and book publishers. It was actually shot to #1 on the book charts. But in this book, it's gotten a lot of press. And in the description, I'll include a couple of the articles where you can see them. Things like allegations about Mark Zuckerberg's working style, or things like Sheryl Sandberg and how she allegedly had an assistant. They take turns sitting on each other's laps and buying each other lingerie. And a lot of that has gotten a lot of coverage. And Meta's response publicly has been that these are out of date and false accusations. And so they're certainly denying this. And so this is allegations, and I expect that legal breakdown to occur. But yes, her non-disclosure agreement was upheld in court, at least for that emergency order from the arbitrator barring her from promoting it. But when I look at cases like this, I like to not just talk about the sensational parts, but what can every organization learn, whether it's a lawsuit that comes in the news or allegations in the book. And so as I read it, because I've now read the whole thing, there are 5 different aspects that stuck out to me of things that Sarah's alleging happened in the book. And of course, I'm saying alleging because this is a subject of legal news, but really 5 lessons of things that definitely can happen at any organization, things that are important to take away so that hopefully you as a leader in your organization learns to not do these things before they're subject of a book. The first is about personal lives and work and performance reviews. Now, in this part of the book, Sarah's in Mexico with 2 other Facebook executives going to events on behalf of the company. And when they were going from one event at the Mexican president's house to another, she got an urgent call from her husband because they had a newborn. The newborn was newly home with the nanny. And the husband saw on the baby cam that the baby seemed to be in the playpen by themselves for a long time. And all of a sudden, there was a firefighter in the room. And so he's freaking out, taking a taxi back to their apartment. She's trying to figure out, of course, what's going on. It turns out that their new nanny had locked herself out of the apartment and had to call a firefighter to help her get in. So Sarah talks about this, that this happened. Eventually they got to the event. Nothing more was said. Until her performance review, when her boss, who wasn't even in Mexico or in the car when this was happening, had said, "Don't bring up stories like that with your nanny and your baby." And Sarah was caught off guard because she hadn't talked about this at all since that event. And she said, this wasn't a story. This is something that happened. But she heard a message loud and clear, which is, don't talk to other executives about your problems at home. And so Sarah had said later on, when her baby got rushed to the emergency room, she was sure not to talk about it at work until days later when she mentioned it in passing. So overall, people's personal lives and work can be complicated. But creating an environment where people feel comfortable sharing what's happening to them, even to talk about it, and not worrying that it's going to get caught up in a performance review later on or they'll be judged by it. And so finding that balance and making sure that if something is going to be brought up on their performance review, whether it's personal or not, it shouldn't be a surprise. That should not be the first time that an employee hears about it from you, because otherwise it just leads them to suspicion, what conversations have been happening about this? And these values about personal life and family, is this just window dressing as a corporate value? The second is about travel and expense and remembering people's comfort. So in this section, Sarah's talking about this Women's Day event that Sheryl Sandberg would hold to have women at Facebook come to the headquarters and all come together to the Bay Area. But Sarah had said they all had to share rooms, which felt uncomfortable to be having pajamas and sharing with colleagues, maybe those that you didn't know before. And this is a lesson for all organizations because travel and expense policies can vary. Sometimes people may travel all the time for work. At other times, it may be pretty rare, it may be a one-off conference or things like that. And in some industries, things like sharing rooms or having your employees, team members share rooms is more common. but remembering that it can feel incredibly uncomfortable for colleagues that, whether they know each other well or not, may not feel so comfortable sharing a room and all of that while they're on this trip. And so thinking about your travel and expense policies or what you're expecting of employees and knowing, is that something you make all executives do? Or is it things like compromising people's personal comfort? Or things like safety, like having a dollar limit that means that people have to stay at a hotel that they're not comfortable with? Or thinking about transportation after hours. Are you making people, walk back and forth to events, or what does that transportation look like? And so just having a sense of talking to employees about travel and expense and saying, what do you wish that we had, or what do you wish we could do that's different than what we do now? Because I can tell you from posting videos about things like travel, that aspect of people sharing rooms is a much more hot topic and hot button issue than your employees probably feel comfortable raising with you. The third is something that happened at a bougie conference, but that could happen in any workplace. Now, this happened at Davos, which is an annual meeting of the World Economic Forum. It's like a global think tank. If you haven't heard of Davos, look it up. It'll give more information than I'll give here. But Sarah was there on behalf of Meta, along with other executives. And there was one that had brought these like cowboy-style snow boots that he was really proud of. It was winter in Switzerland, so he wore them around and was sending pictures of them. Well, at some point, he lost the boots. And Sarah had nothing to do with that. But he sent an email to staff and said that SWW, Sarah's initials, that she'd lost his boots. So Sarah ended up going around on hands and knees, literally crawling to look for his boots, finally found them after midnight and sent him an email. Now, the lesson is, while most people won't find themselves literally crawling on their hands in a Swiss global conference, the power dynamics at work can be very real in any manager-employee relationship. And so if there's someone that, even jokingly, sends out something blaming an employee for something, those words can carry weight. So those words and actions. So it's always important to remember that as a leader, whether you feel like you're joking around or whether you say something in passing, that can often have a lot more impact on your employees. They may think if you don't like something that they did, like, oh my gosh, am I going to get fired? Or if you ask them to do something and don't give a timeline, they may think, I need to stay late and get this done as soon as possible. And so being clear and just remembering that when you're in the position of leadership and in power and authority, that those power dynamics really are skewed in your favor. And so doing things like being clear with employees, giving timelines, not even jokingly to give blame or things like that, to do things that, on reflection, may make someone really scurry around and worry about their employment or make them do things that are completely unnecessary. The fourth is kind of funny, and it's not about a funny topic, but an executive at Facebook was having a meeting from the DC Facebook office on video conference with a group of human rights representatives. It was a pretty contentious meeting. Now, in the DC office, there were different conference rooms, and like some corporate environments, they had like quirky names. So not just like Conference Room 1, but the conference room that they were in was called the Wicked Witch of the West. And because this was a video conference, that name, the Wicked Witch of the West, appeared on screen below the speaker for the whole meeting. And so Sarah had pointed this out, and so a few days later, that conference room name was changed. Now, most of the time, we're not working in a conference room with a name like that, but oftentimes at work, there can be things, whether it's like a corporate acronym, or whether it's something that's said or done, it may have always been that way, but there may be a lot of employees that would love to speak up and say, like, hey, maybe this isn't a good idea, but they don't feel like they can. They're worried about how it will be reacted, or they've seen reactions from others. And so just knowing, taking the opportunity, because culture is a lot about perspectives and moments. And so asking employees, is there anything that you would have us think twice about, or maybe could sound wrong to other people, or that you'd recommend we change the name of, or just getting people's opinions? Because I bet if you'd had that, at some point in time, someone may have said, like, hey, if we have this conference room, it may sound kind of weird, especially if it's like a third party, like, come meet me in the Wicked Witch of the West conference room. And sometimes things can sound funny to people like executive level or leaders and like it's a joke, but to other people, often it's those employees that see things with a clear lens and are like, that could be weird or off-putting, but it's important to give them the opportunity to actually say that and feel comfortable doing so. The fifth and final topic is about a project gone awry. Now, a lot of the book focuses on this project internet.org, which was this idea to spread connectivity to the internet around the world, including people that historically hadn't had much internet access. And it changed names, so it was internet.org, changed to Free Basics. But a lot of the book talks about this because a lot of the trips or meetings or things like that were about this project in particular. And it clearly was taking up a lot of time and attention at Facebook, at Meta. Like Mark Zuckerberg was very much involved in it, as the book tells. But when the project ended, as Sarah says in the book, it wasn't like a big, okay, going out with a bang. It was just kind of went away. Like no more daily meetings, no more war room, as she says it. Now, the lesson is all the time at work, there are projects that are like a big initiative or even things that are a small one. Like we're going to start doing things this way. And then you don't. Like a project, people just decide to not do it, do something differently, or go back to the old way of doing things, or whatever that looks like. But what happens so frequently is exactly this. Like things just change. And there's no conversation about it. Like there's no big communication about it. And there's not the opportunity to do what so many organizations could, which is to say, okay, this didn't go well. Let's talk about why and lessons learned. Because what that can mean for employees see that, like especially if top leaders do something and they've talked so much about something, and all of a sudden people say, we don't really hear about anything about that. Like, oh, that went away. Like, okay. And people may joke about that. But how employees can interpret that is, okay, well, if I make a mistake or I do something wrong, then I shouldn't be talk about it and I shouldn't be making a big deal. I should hide it and just pretend and shift it away. And that can be a problem because when people make mistakes, one of the worst things that can happen is that people don't know about it and someone is trying to clean it up all by themselves. And so as an organization, not only are you sending signals of, mistakes are not okay and we shouldn't talk about them, but you're missing an opportunity to be transparent. Like trust and communication are built from the opportunity to talk about when things go wrong, what you could have done differently, how maybe you didn't get input from some people or what you could have done. And so using those opportunities is one of the biggest misses I've seen from large type projects, even small shifts. And so just taking that away to remember, talking about it isn't just okay, it's a really good thing to do. Now, overall, the book was a really interesting read. And again, like Facebook and Meta definitely have their thoughts on it, and it's from one person's perspective. But what it gave me a peek into is I could see so many of the common themes that you see at so many organizations of things where executives, leaders that you think have everything together, like they're just humans. And sometimes they do things that absolutely make you shake your head and otherwise. But what I often tell organizations, like organizations that'll talk to me about manager training, like, oh, I wish we had manager training. I'll say, like, no organization is perfect. And so at any point, people could probably poke things and say, like, this went terribly at an organization or a leader made a mistake. Because as humans, you're always going to do things that you look back on and think, like, okay, I guess I would have done that differently. Maybe you don't realize it at the time. But the common themes of this book are to really think about your organizational values and things like that you're saying, like, what do we stand for? And so I always say to organizations, I really look at that, like look at your organizational values and talk about that as a team to say, do you see these actually lived out? Are there areas that we could do differently? And as a leader, what can be so helpful is to take a moment and pause and to think about other people's considerations, whether it's someone that loses their boots or whether you do something and you make a joke to an employee of like, oh, it's all your fault. How is that person interpreting that? And so pausing and considering someone else's perspective is something that managers often don't do because you're just trying to get through all your busy work. But when you do that and think in advance of like, okay, how may someone take this? Or what could I do or say in this situation? The more you make a habit of doing that, often the better your leadership is. People aren't looking to you to be perfect, and they're not looking to you to make decisions in an instant. It's okay to pause, and to tell employees it's okay to pause as well. And so a takeaway is, yes, this is a very sensational book, and there's some very sensational parts that, again, you can see in the description and see articles about that. But what it does paint a picture of is, again, every organization has opportunities to do things differently. And the biggest thing you can do is listen to employees while they're still employees and ask them for their input and do something about it. If you like this breakdown, feel free to subscribe and stick around. Every week, I publish a longer video. It may include things like a legal case breakdown and lessons learned. Sometimes I do role plays where I'm a manager or HR explaining what to do and say in different situations. Or other times I just give tips. I was a lawyer and an HR for years, and I saw how things can really easily go astray in legal situations, but also more commonly, how employees either don't perform their best at work or they choose to leave because they don't feel like they have a connection with their manager and they don't care or understand why they should care about their work. And so giving managers practical tools, and by managers, from first-line managers in every industry, from corporate to manufacturing to healthcare, all the way through senior leadership, giving practical tools. So I'll do that here on this channel and other channels on social media at Manager Method, and also my business, Manager Method, where we provide individual training courses for managers, but also organizational packages so that you can help to upskill your managers and help them know what to do and say in different situations, including toolkits that can be customized for any industry, from nonprofit to retail to remote work, so that your managers know that they can take actions that drive performance, but also impact their team members' careers.